Hi everyone, I'm Bridget.
And I'm Ryan.
Welcome to our presentation. I'm going to start with a quote. Every word and action can send a message. It tells children or students or athletes how to think about themselves. It can be a fixed mindset message that says, you have permanent traits and I'm judging them. Or it can be a growth mindset message that says, you are a developing person and I am interested in your development. So every word and action can send a message. This statement really captures the power of our actions, which are driven by our beliefs about the world. We may not be aware of these beliefs, and thus we may not realize how they can harm others. Unconscious beliefs, or stereotypes, about certain groups of people can have harmful effects for the victims of these stereotypes. In the field of education, for example, if a teacher makes assumptions, intentionally or not, about a student's intelligence based on the color of their skin, students may internalize these messages in a way that affects their performance in school. This brings us to the topic of our research. Our study builds upon previous studies into stereotypes, specifically stereotype priming and implicit theories of intelligence. I'll explain more about these theories in a minute. But first, let's address stereotype priming. So in a stereotype priming task, participants are shown several word pairs. The first word in the pair is known as a prime, and it's typically associated with a social category such as race or gender. Participants are asked to respond to the second word, also known as the target word, in a manner that's relevant to the particular study. The two words may or not correspond with a stereotype about a certain group. Previous research has revealed a stereotype priming effect, meaning that participants respond faster to word pairs that are consistent with stereotypes about specific groups. The studies that we found show this effect for gender stereotypes and racial stereotypes towards African Americans. Another variable of interest is individuals' implicit theories of intelligence, originally conceptualized by the psychologist Carol Dweck. Dweck posits that people tend to endorse one of two views about human traits. An incremental theory of intelligence, also known as a growth mindset, refers to the view that intelligence is malleable and can grow with time and effort. In contrast, an entity view or fixed mindset reflects the belief that one's intelligence is fixed and cannot change. Previous studies have explored several aspects of these theories. For example, an intervention targeting at-risk middle school students implemented incremental theory-based activities. Those who received this intervention significantly improved achievement test scores compared to a control group. Another study investigated the relationship between stereotypes and implicit theories of intelligence. It was found that those who endorse an entity theory of intelligence more strongly agreed with stereotypes towards Latinx people, African Americans, and other minorities. Our study draws upon this previous research. Its purpose is twofold. First, to add to the existing data about stereotype priming, specifically by priming stereotypes about Latinx people, in addition to assumptions about white individuals. Also, we want to explore if stereotypes towards specific groups influence how individuals view a member of that group's intelligence. Specifically, we intend to discover whether or not participants' implicit beliefs about another person's intelligence are influenced by the individual's ethnicity. We predict that participants exposed to word pairs that are consistent with stereotypes about Latinx people will respond faster to the prime target trials. We also predict that they will more strongly endorse entity theories of intelligence compared to those who view stereotype incongruent pairs. Finally, we expect participants to be more likely to agree with the entity view if the student described in the vignette is perceived to be Latinx.
For methods, 23 undergraduates at the University of San Diego were used as participants. They were recruited through introductory psychology courses and completed the study for either course or extra credit. The participants were asked to watch short video clips composed of either a white or Latinx name and a target word that was either stereotype congruent or incongruent to that said name. They then completed a judgment task for each clip where they selected the category that they believed the target word was most strongly associated with, either Latinx or white. During this, their response times were then recorded. After the clips came the vignette where the participants read a brief passage about either a white or Latinx male, and then answered a questionnaire that asked questions about views of intelligence. Some questions had an entity view of intelligence, some had an incremental view of intelligence, and the rest were about intelligence growth in general. The participants then finished the study by completing a second questionnaire about their demographics, like their age, gender, where they're from, and other information.
Once the study was completed, we examined our two dependent variables, response time for the priming trials and implicit theories of intelligence. We averaged each participant's response time across the 10 trials and analyzed the mean response times using a one-way ANOVA. Although those in the stereotype congruent group responded faster to the priming trials, these results were not significant. Therefore, we cannot say that the results were consistent with our hypothesis that participants would demonstrate a stereotype priming effect. A 2x2 ANOVA was then conducted using the intelligence view scores as the dependent variable. For each participant, we created a composite score based on their answers to the 7 statements. Participants with scores above 28, indicating a mean score of 4 across the 7 items, were classified as incremental theorists. Those with composite scores below 28 were categorized as entity theorists. We found no main effect of priming condition. Contrary to our prediction, individuals who were primed with stereotype congruent trials did not more strongly subscribe to entity theories of intelligence. The results also showed no main effect for the ethnicity of the student in the vignette. This was also inconsistent with our prediction that participants who read the vignette about a student perceived to be Latinx would more strongly endorse an entity theory of intelligence. There was also no interaction between priming condition and the ethnicity of the student. We can see these results displayed here graphically, and we can see that there are no significant differences between groups, regardless of stereotype congruence or incongruence, whether the participants viewed a vignette of a white student or a Latinx student, the scores were relatively similar.
Our results reveal no significant evidence for a relationship between racial stereotype activation and implicit views of intelligence. Contrary to our hypotheses, priming participants with word pairs consistent with stereotypes about Latinx people did not influence the participants' response times, nor did it result in stronger endorsement of the entity view of intelligence. The participants' responses to the implicit theories of intelligence questionnaire were also similar. Regardless of which vignette they read, most participants appeared to believe that the student could improve his intelligence with time and effort. As for limitations, one limitation to our study is convenience sampling. Our sample was only drawn from a small population of 1 or 2 sections of an introductory psychology class, which may have reduced the generalizability of our results. Another limitation is limited resources. With limited resources, it was difficult to create a priming task that was similar to the ones used in previous research studies. We only had Qualtrics, which is an online survey tool to use, and Thus, we lack the necessary equipment for participants to complete a priming task in an effective manner. We believe that a laboratory setting would have been better and more effective. Also, because one's implicit theory of intelligence is a trait variable, it is quite unlikely that one's view would adjust simply based upon information about someone else. Trait variables are pre-existing characteristics and they tend to be relatively stable. So the participants may endorse entity or incremental theories regardless of the student's perceived ethnicity. Lastly, the vignette could have been a limitation as well because the participants could have read the story in a casual manner, not paying close attention to the student's name in the vignette. Therefore, the student's ethnicity may not have played a large role in determining the responses to the intelligence questions. As for future research, the study should have participants complete a more expansive stereotype priming task that includes more trials and takes place in a laboratory setting that is controlled. It is also essential to ensure that each prime and target word pair is strongly associated to see a stronger priming effect. Future studies should also include teachers as participants because implicit theories of intelligence are closely related to the field of education. This research could possibly alert the teachers to stereotypical beliefs they may already have, which could indirectly affect their students of color. This concludes our presentation, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.